What's up, guys? Lucky Locks here. Welcome back to another prediction video, and this is going to be for LFA 120, Cantuaria versus Horth 120. Man, time really flies. The year's almost over. We got a nice LFA card here to help close this out, and Mayra Cantuaria and Jamey-Lyn Horth are in the main event for the vacant flyweight title. And we have a good co-main event of Bruno, Assis, and Jalinn as well, and just a bunch of good fights in the card. So yeah, without any further ado, let's just get right into the fights here. So the first fight we have on the card is going to be between Felipe Martinez Donis and Henry Huff. And Martinez Donis was 7-0 as an amateur before turning pro. He's now 3-1 as a professional, and the loss came to Angel Pacheco, who's pretty decent. He's an aggressive fighter. He's a good striker, good grappler. He has a wrestling base. Wrestled in high school, went into martial arts after. He's got a pretty thick build, physically strong. And Henry Huff, on the other hand, was 5-1 as an amateur, so another strong amateur career. You love to see that, coming into the regionals here. And he's 3-0 as a pro now. His last fight snapped 8 consecutive wins between the two levels. And this guy likes to grapple too. He has a bunch of submissions on his resume. Lost to a tough opponent last time out. Both of these guys are talented, and it should be a pretty close fight. I'm going to have to slightly lean towards Martinez Donis. I like his wrestling. I like his physical style of fighting. I think this is going to be a close one. I have no play here, but where I feel like both guys, might come out and try to grapple here, I'm just going to go with the guy I believe is a little bit better. But it's a tough one to call. It's a close fight, and I don't have any money on the line in this one. Next up, we have a strawweight bout between Olivia Beeskau and Rachel Martinez. Beeskau is the more experienced pro with the 1-0 record, facing a debutante here, and she won her pro debut by decision over an 0-6 opponent. She had a 4-1 amateur career, which is pretty good, but hasn't fought anyone with a winning record at either level, amateur or pro. Martinez, on the other hand, training out of the Midwest Training Center in Illinois. I believe that ACA heavyweight Daniel James trains there from time to time. Martinez is making her pro debut. She is 5-1 as an amateur, and in her last fight, she beat a 5-0 opponent with a slam in round 1. So slam KO over an undefeated opponent in the main event. Nice way to close out your amateur career, coming up to the pros now. And I'll be honest, I didn't really look into this fight too much. I like Martinez to win. And just because, she was like minus 280 before, I think she's down to like minus 240, but still, I agree she should be the favorite. And to be honest, guys, really anything could happen here. This isn't really a high-level fight, and it's just not something I'm interested in betting, but I do like the favorite, Rachel Martinez, to win here. Okay, next up, we have a heavyweight matchup between Royce White and Daiqkwon Buckley, and this is a pretty interesting one for the reason that Royce White is a former NBA/Big Three player. Started training MMA in 2019, switched over from basketball, and he was a pretty nasty player in college at Iowa State. But we are here breaking down an MMA fight, not a basketball game. This feels like something straight out of a Triller event. But yeah, Royce White has never competed officially in MMA as far as I can see. He is 30 years old, so did start, a little bit late to become a professional MMA fighter at 28 years old. All power to him, though. He's got a pro fight booked, so he must be doing something right. Obviously, he's a good athlete, NBA caliber athlete, and appears to have taken his time. He was talking about this back in 2019. He's taken 2 years to kind of learn the ropes. He's 6'8". I imagine he's got a super long reach as well. So we'll definitely go out on a limb here and say he's going to be the bigger guy, but he will be slimmer. And pretty much no tape on this guy, so it's hard to really get a read on how good he is. But considering he started it 2 years ago, I'm going to assume not that good. But he's not exactly fighting a world champion here. Standing across from him in the cage will be Daiqkwon Buckley, who's also kind of transitioning to MMA from a different sport. I'll get more into that later. He played football in college at Temple after playing in Salisbury in high school, kind of near where I went to high school, actually, down in New England. But he first competed as an amateur in MMA in 2016. He is a 1-1 amateur with a split decision loss and a submission win. He was supposed to be fighting for an amateur title actually in 2020, but the fight got scrapped. I believe that his main career, he is a police officer. And leading up to that title fight, he had moved from heavyweight to super heavyweight. Said he had taken some time off training and he had put on some weight. But, he was saying regardless, he'd be in good shape and, the cardio would be good. And he said he was likely going to be back at heavyweight after, because as the training was continuing, it was continuing just to get him slimmed down. And presumably it's all back under control now, back at the 265 limit here. And he's only 25 years old, so I think it's safe to assume that he started training MMA before his first fight. So that would make him around 20 years old when he first started. So I like that he's fought before. He's fought twice. I like that he's 5 years younger and has been training presumably at least 3 years longer, as intermittent as it might have been. I was able to find one clip of one of his fights on YouTube, but yeah, in general, it's really hard to find anything on either of these guys. It's the pro debut for both guys. It might actually be the MMA debut in general for Royce White, but yeah, this is probably a fight you shouldn't bet, but yet I actually bet this one. I have a play here. I bet on Buckley at plus 180. I just don't know why someone making their MMA debut at 30 years old should be minus 220. Doesn't really make sense to me. I'll take, Buckley at plus 180. It was a small play, but still, I kind of like it. And I got some money there for some reason. So we'll see if I look like a genius or if I look like a complete idiot come Friday night. Next up, we have a flyweight bout between Tony Laramie and Tyus White. And this is an interesting fight with some very interesting line movement. Tony Laramie is still very young at 22 years old. He is the brother of TJ Laramie, UFC fighter. Laramie had a 4-0 amateur career. All 4 were finishes, and he is currently a 5-2 pro. So he had 4 fights on TKO. That's a Quebec-based promotion in 2017. He would have been like 16, 17, probably 17 years old at the time. He went 2-2, beat Keith Lee in his debut, Kevin Lee's younger brother, takes 2 years off and comes back in 2019 and has now won 3 straight. So 2 knockouts and a decision over a very experienced Claudio Ledesma, who had 24 pro fights when they fought. He had a long CFFC career, fought on Bellator 2, fought Aljamain Sterling, fought Brian Kelleher, fought Jimmy Rivera, and his last fight before fighting Tony Laramie was Juan Puerta, who we saw not too long ago on Contender Series. And that's a really nice win for Laramie there. That's pretty impressive. And he won the PFC 125-pound belt in that fight. He's been in Las Vegas leading up to this fight, training at Extreme Couture, living with Cody Stamann. So he's roommates with a UFC guy. Was training with, a lot of UFC guys at that gym. Training with Manel Kape before this fight, apparently. Said he got a little bit of working with Aljamain Sterling. And Laramie is 5'2", so he'll be at a size disadvantage here, but he's used to that. That's kind of normal. Even at flyweight 5'2", you're going to be the shorter guy in a lot of your matchups. He loves to pressure and come forward. He's a pretty good striker in the pocket when he closes the distance. He landed some nice combos on Ledesma, landed a real nice right hand towards the end of round 1. And he's got good head movement, nice feints, good footwork. He ran into a little trouble being held down in the later rounds in his last fight, and that's an area where he'll need to be really good against White. He was pretty active off his back, though, for what it's worth. Tyus White turned pro in 2019 after an undefeated amateur career. He is 4-0 as a pro with 3 finishes, and he's 5'9" at flyweight, and that's pretty tall. As it is at flyweight, going to be even more so against a 5'2" opponent, be even more prominent. And in terms of competition, White hasn't challenged himself in the same way that Laramie has at all. He hasn't really fought anyone that great. He hasn't fought anyone with a winning record. He opened up as a pretty heavy favorite in this matchup at minus 300, then got down to like minus 135, minus 130, and now he's the full-on underdog with Tony Laramie actually at like minus 165 right now at the time of recording. And White is an excellent wrestler. He was a Wisconsin state champion in high school, went on to wrestle at Rochester Community and Technical College, and had lots of success there as well, defeated NCAA D1 wrestlers. And he uses the wrestling well in MMA, really good for him to have with the size, just complements his size really well at this weight class. But as far as a pick goes, I think this is going to be a really close matchup. If you got Laramie early, he was like plus 240 when he opened. I think you made a really good bet there. At the current prices, from a betting standpoint, I might even lean slightly towards White with the big size advantage and the wrestling acumen at dog money if you're going to bet it. But I do believe that Tony Laramie is the better mixed martial artist all around. I think he deserves to be the favorite. So prediction standpoint, I'm going to say, Tony Laramie. But if you're going to bet this one, I don't know, the size and the wrestling could be a little problematic. I think there could be a little bit of value on White as the dog, but I'm going with Laramie, and I'm not going to touch this one betting-wise. I would have loved to have gotten Laramie, at plus 240 or like even plus 180 or something. But at the current prices, I'm going to stay away from this one betting wise. So that's going to take us to the co-main event, and the co-main event will be contested between Bruno Assis and Jalinn Fuller at middleweight. So for Bruno, 11-5 record, but pretty impressive resume nonetheless. Losses include Paulo Costa, 2015. Can't hold that one against him. Had a loss over on ACB over in Russia in 2017. Lost in 2018 on Dana White's Contender Series to Andre Muniz. And he had a loss on Brave to Daniel Pereira in 2019. And also a loss to Aaron Jeffrey, who we saw on Dana White's Contender Series and who was a Cage Fury FC champion. So I don't think any of those losses are bad coming into a fight with Jalinn Fuller. I think a lot of those guys could probably beat Jalinn Fuller too, but Bruno has faced way better competition than Fuller has. He just hasn't had success against that next step up. And it's the way that he lost them that makes me nervous. He got KO'd in all of them except Andre Muniz, who obviously is not a striker, and Muniz did outstrike him pretty badly at distance in that fight. I think that Bruno could have some grappling success here, however. I think that he could potentially have success standing too. I just don't trust his chin against a guy like Fuller. That's the biggest concern for me here. Both guys with really long arms. Assis is coming off 2 round 1 submissions on Titan FC, the last one coming over Shane O'Shea, and I think he has some pretty good finishing upside in this fight too, actually. I think that if he can get this fight down and get to a good position, I definitely could see him getting a sub or a ground and pound stoppage. Jalinn Fuller is going to be standing across the cage from him, and he's at 185 pounds here. I think that's for the best. He missed weight by like 6 pounds last time at welterweight, and he is a pretty big guy with a big frame. He's undefeated at 5-0. He has 3 round 1 knockouts and 1 round 3 submission in those 5 wins. I think his path to victory is pretty clear in this fight. I think he wants to keep it standing and get a knockout, check that chin. I think he's live to get a KO even later into the fight if it does go there. I don't see him having too much success on the ground. I think this is a fight that is going to finish inside the distance. Fuller gets a lot of round 1 knockouts, and Bruno has been knocked out in round 1 in 80% of his losses. So for a pick, I'm going to go Jalinn Fuller, but I don't actually think Bruno is a bad bet here. I just can't trust his chin. I would have this line potentially even a little closer than it is, and probably will pass on this fight unless we get some big numbers on props. But if I gotta pick a side, I'm gonna go with Jalinn Fuller just because, I just can't trust Bruno Assis' chin. I mean, if all those losses that Bruno had were decisions, I would probably be on him here. But I think Jalinn Fuller is live to get a knockout in this one. But ultimately, I think that if fight doesn't go the distance is a decent price, that's a good play here. But it probably won't be because I think the book is gonna see this one similarly. I think that they're gonna see this one finishing inside the distance. All right, so it's main event time, a bout between Mayra Cantuaria and Jamey-Lyn Horth at 125 pounds for the vacant LFA women's flyweight title. And Mayra Cantuaria is the SFT flyweight champ. She defeated a 4-4 opponent to get it, but she does have a good resume. Her last loss was in 2017. It was to Lara Procopio. She's fought Amanda Lemos 2 times. She has a draw and a loss, and her other loss was Sarah Frota. So all 3 opponents who defeated her went on to compete in the UFC. Cantuaria is a jiu-jitsu black belt. She's a southpaw, and Horth has never fought a southpaw before, so that could definitely come into play. Cantuaria is 5'7" with a 68.5-inch reach, which is great size for women's flyweight, but she's been listed at 5'5" before, so we'll see what the LFA stats actually have on fight night, but I have a feeling that Horth is actually going to be taller. I think that she's a more legitimate 5'7", but we'll see. We'll see what the heights are actually on fight night, and if we get a weigh-in photo. I do think Cantuaria will have that 1.5 inch in reach though, which she does have according to Tapology, but Cantuaria is a good grappler. Obviously she's a black belt and she's not afraid to go to it. If she feels like she has that advantage, she'll use it readily. Looks to advance and pass guard on the ground, does have some submissions. I don't think her sub game is super crazy personally, but she is definitely a good minute winner on the mat. Definitely has the competition advantage in this matchup far and away, I'd say. Just fought in July, getting a knockout win in a title fight, so she's in good form coming in here. Horth, on the other hand, is a 4-0 pro, 3-0 amateur. She's the BFL flyweight champ. Same promotion we saw Chad Anheliger and Jared Revel come from recently. She beat Lupi Godinez 2 times as an amateur, and they now train together in BC. Horth has also been training with Brazilian 1FC fighter Bibiano Fernandes. She has 4 finishes and 4 pro fights, so she's got that 100% finish rate, 3 knockouts, 1 submission, but relatively low level of competition as a pro compared to Cantuaria. But what I will say is that both women have fought UFC competition. Horth is 2-0, Cantuaria is 0-3-1. Obviously, I believe that Cantuaria had a little bit more difficult tasks, fighting as a pro, whereas Horth's UFC comp that she beat was Lupi Godinez, and literally her first 2 amateur fights ever. So a little bit of different levels, but still interesting to note. Still something to be said for the resume of Horth, especially her impressive finishing numbers. She hasn't competed in almost 2 years now, but she was slated to be on Dana White's Contender Series last year, I believe. It fell through, and she had a really hard time getting fights on the regional scene. Nobody wanted to fight her. She will probably want to make this a striking match. We've seen opponents have some brief success against her with the body lock and a more grinding, slow style. Horth has a striking base, so I'd like to see her play to her strengths here. She has come out and said she feels like her wrestling and grappling are underrated and have been improving consistently. If she has really gotten into that, she is good size for the division, and I think that she could implement it well. She was talking about the power she has in her striking and wanting to find a finish that way, though, leading up to this. So I'm hoping that that's the game plan that she wants to go with. I think she'll probably look to pressure on the feet and land heavy shots. Cantuaria typically doesn't really like to fight aggressive strikers, and I think Horth has to come out really mean in this one. Horth can take punishment as well. We've seen in her appearance on TKO, the Quebec promotion that we're talking about with Tony Laramie earlier, actually. She was dropped in that first round and came back to get a rear naked choke in the third, and the fighter that she submitted in that fight went on to win a brown belt no-gi competition soon after, according to an interview with Jamey-Lyn Horth. And I think that Horth is physical enough to be able to negate at least some of the takedowns in this fight, and I think she'll be the meaner, more aggressive fighter standing. In a 5-round fight, I actually do think Horth will be able to have some success standing in the later rounds. I think that she'll have the slightly better cardio and striking acumen, and she's going to want to be engaged for as little time as possible in the grappling, in my opinion. That's where I could see Cantuaria having a lot of success in stealing some rounds. I think that the size and physicality of Horth will aid her in her takedown defense here, but once she does get on the ground, if it does happen, I think that she's going to be in some trouble with Cantuaria down there. So I'm actually going to go with the underdog Jamey-Lyn Horth to win here. At the dog money, I like Horth. It opened at a pick'em, and that's probably about right. I'm hoping maybe to get a little better than plus 125, because for a little while, it was there, but I just don't know if we'll get that much better. So I'll probably end up playing plus 125 if it's not moving in the near future, but I haven't played it yet. But I do like Jamey-Lyn Horth at the dog money here, but it should be a close fight, should be a good one, and we'll have a new LFA women's flyweight champion at the end of the night. So yeah, should be a really good event. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. That's going to do it for me. Take it easy and best of luck this weekend.